Here are my top 20 running backs of all time. Let's go. Before I get started, I want to give a shout out to a few honorable mentions, those being John Riggins, Franco Harris, and Frank Gore. Coming in at number 20, I got Tony Dorsett. Even though Emmitt Smith erased Dorsett from Cowboys record books, he remains an all-time great. Weighing less than 200 pounds, Dorsett made up for his lack of size with speed and smoothness, and had a knack for avoiding defenders. Dorsett is tied for the longest run from scrimmage with 99 yards, helped the Cowboys win Super Bowl XII, and is 10th in career rushing yards. At 19, I got Gale Sayers. Sayers was a do-it-all back. As great as he was as a running back, he was even better as a return specialist. Sayers made first-team All-Pro 5 times, was top 5 in MVP voting in each of those seasons, and led the league in overall scoring in 1965. Unfortunately, Sayers was forced to retire at the age of 28 due to injuries, and never reached his full potential. At 18, I got Christian McCaffrey. The sad thing about modern-day running backs is that many of them will get swept under the rug in the history books due to the position not being valued the same way compared to other eras, but CMC will not be one of them. He won Offensive Player of the Year and led the league in rushing yards this past season, and is one of 3 running backs to rush and receive for 1,000 yards in the same season. CMC is still in his prime and shows no sign of slowing down, meaning he could still rise on this list. At 17, I got Curtis Martin. Very few running backs epitomize consistency the way Martin did, rushing for over 1,000 yards and reaching 1,400 scrimmage yards in each of his first 10 seasons. While Martin doesn't have that one all-time great season like many guys on this list, he did get a rushing title in 2004. Where most running backs have had their best season early in their careers, Martin had his best season at age 31, rushing for nearly 1,700 yards and 14 touchdowns. At 16, I got Jerome Bettis. Bettis, widely known as the Bus, is one of the most powerful running backs to ever play the game. Weighing over 250 pounds, Bettis had a rare combination of size, speed, and power to run through defenders instead of around them, and he did it consistently for over a decade. The Bus ranks 8th in career rushing yards and helped the Steelers win Super Bowl 40. At 15, I got Edgerrin James. Edge had immediate success with the Colts. He led the league in rushing in his first 2 seasons, with an absurd 2,300 scrimmage yards in his second season. James was a consistent dual threat for the Colts offense back in the 2000s, even though he never had a season better than his rookie or sophomore seasons. He went on to have 5 more 1,000-yard seasons from 2003 to 2007, all while sharing the field with other weapons like Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. At 14, I got Derrick Henry. Henry started slow in his first few years in the league, but has only gotten better with time. Henry is one of 8 running backs to rush for 2,000 yards, which is even more impressive when you consider that he did it in a pass-heavy era. Henry led the league in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns in both 2019 and 2020, and won Offensive Player of the Year in 2020. Henry is starting a new chapter with the Ravens and still has a lot of football left in him. He should be higher on this list by the time he retires. At 13, I got Terrell Davis. Davis's career was short-lived, as he only played 7 seasons. That's normally not a large enough sample size to make a list like this, but Davis is an exception. In his 4 healthy seasons, he made 3 first-team All-Pro selections, won Offensive Player of the Year twice, helped the Broncos win Super Bowls 32 and 33, winning MVP in Super Bowl 33, won a regular season MVP in 1998, and became a member of the 2,000-yard club. Davis has accomplished more than most players who played twice as long. At 12, I got Thurman Thomas. In a way, Thomas was ahead of his time. In addition to his rushing ability, he provided value in the passing game. This level of versatility made Thomas the workhorse of the Bills' offense that made 4 consecutive Super Bowls and the league leader in scrimmage yards 4 years in a row. Thomas won league MVP in 1991 and probably would have been MVP in Super Bowl 25 if it weren't for Scott Norwood's missed field goal. as he recorded 190 yards from scrimmage and a rushing touchdown. At 11, I got Marcus Allen. Allen was the first player in NFL history with 10,000 career rushing yards and 5,000 receiving yards. Allen won MVP in 1985 and MVP in Super Bowl XVIII, where he ran for 191 yards, including an electrifying 74-yard touchdown run. Unfortunately, it all went downhill because Allen and Al Davis did not have a good relationship, and Allen spent many of his prime years running on the bench in favor of Bo Jackson, until his age 33 season when he joined the Chiefs. At 10, I got O.J. Simpson. O.J. is more well known for his off-field actions, but you can't document the history of NFL running backs without him. O.J. won MVP in 1973 after becoming the first running back to rush for 2,000 yards, and the only player to do so in a 14-game season. O.J. won 3 other rushing titles and led the league in touchdowns twice. At 9, I got Eric Dickerson. Dickerson won his first rushing title in his rookie season after rushing for over 1,800 yards and 2,200 yards from scrimmage. He would follow it up with an even better second season, where he broke the single-season rushing yards record with 2,105 yards, a record that still stands after 40 years, and was the co-leader in rushing touchdowns that year. While Dickerson never reached the level of his 1984 season, he would go on to win 2 more rushing titles and Offensive Player of the Year in 1986. At 8, I got Earl Campbell. Earl started off his career winning 3 consecutive Offensive Player of the Year awards, 3 rushing titles, and an MVP in 1979. Campbell's running style was violent and brutal, but his size and strength didn't come at the expense of speed and explosiveness. That style of running may have shortened his career, but tackling Earl on first contact was nearly impossible as he was a man amongst boys. At 7, I got Adrian Peterson. AP played when the NFL was starting to devalue running backs, but his impact was undeniable. AP was by far the best running back in the 2010s. He won MVP in 2012 after rushing for nearly 2,100 yards. He is the most recent running back to win the award and will probably keep that title for a long time, as no running back has even come close to AP's level since his retirement. What's even more impressive is that AP's MVP season was 1 year after tearing his ACL. AP led the league in rushing yards 3 times and rushing touchdowns twice. At 6, I got Marshall Faulk. Faulk started off his career with the Colts, but didn't become an all-time great until he joined the Rams, where he won 3 Offensive Player of the Year awards, an MVP in 2000, and was the engine of one of the greatest offenses of all time, the greatest show on turf, that won Super Bowl 34. Faulk is one of 3 running backs with 1,000 rushing and receiving yards in the same season, along with Roger Craig and Christian McCaffrey. At 5, I got LaDainian Tomlinson. LT has been the best running back in the 21st century so far, and his 2006 MVP season is enough to put him on this list. That season, he had over 1,800 rushing yards, 500 receiving yards, and a record 28 rushing touchdowns. LT's power and explosiveness helped him rush for 1,200 yards in each of his first 7 seasons and 1,100 yards in his 8th, leading the league in rushing yards twice and rushing touchdowns 3 times. At 4, I got Emmitt Smith. Emmitt is the all-time leader in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns by a good margin, and won nearly every award possible for a running back, including an MVP in 1993, 3 Super Bowls, winning MVP in Super Bowl 27, 4 rushing titles, and led the league in rushing touchdowns 3 times. Emmitt was the best player on the Cowboys dynasty in the 90s and had all-time great longevity, rushing for over 1,000 yards 11 times. At 3, I got Walter Payton. Payton was a true workhorse and possessed one of the most complete skill sets the position has ever seen. In addition to being a great pure runner, he provided value as a pass catcher and blocker as well. He was in the MVP conversation throughout the Bears' dominant run in the mid-'80s, and won the award back in 1977, where he led the league in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and all-purpose yards. At 2, I got Jim Brown. In an era where defenses were built to stop the run, Brown dominated them all. He led the league in rushing yards in 8 out of his 9 seasons, led the league in rushing touchdowns 5 times, won 3 MVPs, and an NFL championship in 1964. It's worth mentioning that Brown played before 16-game seasons were a thing, and in his first 4 years, the NFL had 12-game seasons. If it weren't for the next guy on this list, Brown would be the clear GOAT. And finally, at number 1, I got Barry Sanders. The best pure runner of all time, Sanders was a one-man wrecking crew on the Lions offense, using his ultra-rare combination of vision, speed, elusiveness, and power, weaving around defenders like it was nothing. Sanders won 2 Offensive Player of the Year awards, a co-MVP in 1997, led the league in rushing yards 4 times and rushing touchdowns once, and had over 1,100 rushing yards in every season of his career. That's all for today. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications.